And we are back here now with the digital reenactment of Waterloo. We're going slightly ahead of schedule even, and as we go into the final battle of today, as said before, we have been playing since half
Of 10?
half past 10 English time,
Yeah.
and so we've been playing for quite some time already, and it's up for the final scenario of Scourge of War, Waterloo, digital reenactment of the Battle of Waterloo, which took place exactly 200 years ago. For the final scenario, we have selected to play the General Bayonet. We're going to be commanding the Matt, please read it out.
Who am I? Who am I? Oh, the third. You put me on the spot here.
Exactly. So the derde Nederlandse Infanteriedivisie, so the third Dutch infantry division, with Dutch meaning not just from the Netherlands but also from Belgium as well. It's basically
right.
the Low Countries combined that we'll be playing here, and we are going to be playing. Who are we going to be playing? We're going to be playing David Hendrik. And we are going to take command of a division, and we're going to fight against the against Napoleon's crack troops, really, against some of the Imperial Guard. So let's jump in. This is a small size scenario, more or less, in the sense that we're controlling a division, but part of a very big force. We're right in there in Wellington's line, as they're being pressured by the Imperial Guard, and the Imperial Guard is well underway with the advance, and the initial British troops seem to have had their fix really, and they're about to retreat, and we're going to form in and step up as the second line. So we can see a good chunk of the French very close to us, putting pressure, forcing the artillery to run off. The British, especially on this end, are taking a lot of punishment immediately, and it's up to us with our group, so a small force, to save the day, as the Dutch so often do in history.
Do they? How many times?
It's because of all the British propaganda, you don't know about it. So I'm going to move one brigade into line, and I'm going to let the AI take care of that. And I'm going to set them to defend, and I'm going to use the other group to actually go into a line here and to swing around, basically. So to take them from the side and then to roll them up like a carpet. Exactly.
Just like that.
Just like that.
Just like that. And will it go exactly that way?
Yes, everything. every battle plan shatters on first contact.
Yes, as I demonstrated.
Not just you.
Not just me.
Although my last battle went exactly according to plan and still failed, which means that the plan itself was flopped.
Right. We can see that your orders have been issued.
My orders are being issued. My units are reforming, and I want to take direct control of these units. That's one side. The other side I'm going to leave the AI to mess around with. But these guys, I want to take control myself. I'm going to move them up as quickly as possible to reinforce the British. There we go. I'm going to move myself close to the line so I can continue to give orders more efficiently. And you can also see that the French actually managed to bring up a lot of their artillery very close, in between the squares, fairly safely, but shooting canister on the British lines. So we're going to have to do something about that.
The canisters are similar. They're the shrapnel ones, aren't they?
Yes, exactly. So troops are getting organized and moving up. Here we're already seeing some combat. And my left wing is basically controlled by the AI at this moment. And I've set them to hold the line just to defend. And I'm going to set them to more aggressive stance as soon as I will be able to support them on their flank.
Yeah.
So now our unit are getting formed, and I'm going to move them up.
So do we have the old guard involved in this scenario?
here we have
seen the guard yet.
We got the guard over here. It's a good number of guard units pressuring the British line very late in the battle.
So you've completed your defection, and you are now fully on the Allied side.
Yes, definitely. I'm on the Dutch side now, so that's somewhat accurate.
Fair enough.
So what's so special about these guard units? Why were they kind of brought into the end? Are they like the elites?
I think I'm going to grab Ian because he can probably give a bit more background on this.
Most likely, yes. But they're actually redeploying, knowing that standing in squares while being shot at by artillery is not the best thing to do. So we're going to move up and we need to pressure their artillery because I don't like that one bit.
Ian is here to tell us a bit about the background of the Old Guard, what made them so special, and yeah, who they were really.
The Old Guard were sometimes known as les grognards, the grumblers.
Well, that's a very familiar term for us because grognard is the term that all the hardcore wargamers use to describe themselves. They're grognards, so it's they probably know where it comes from, but maybe they don't. So that's quite interesting for many of our listeners.
The Old Guard, there was a qualification. They were all promoted from the ranks, from ordinary infantry units. The criteria was, first of all, you had to be you had to have been wounded twice.
Wounded twice to be in the Old Guard.
And to survive one wound was pretty good going. So to survive 2 wounds was.
I have no idea that was a requirement.
That was the principal one. They had to be immaculate soldiers, and you could put people forward, but it was the emperor who made the final decision.
So he individually decided if every single member of the Old Guard was promoted or not?
I believe so, yes.
Wow.
Apart from that, they had better uniform, better pay. They took the fashion of wearing a gold earring, but that was just because it was a convenient way of carrying money, the gold, without getting it lost in your hat or anywhere else. They certainly were held in reserve as the units of last resort, and they were held in awe by everybody else. Everybody was, it's the Old Guard is coming. There is nothing. It's like a chieftain tank or an Apache Black Hawk helicopter. It is scary.
Had they ever been defeated before the Battle of Waterloo?
No. They will have suffered casualties because there was a constant replacement for people in there. So they had been used in battle, but not to my knowledge, defeated.
So they had a fearsome reputation within their own side and also with the enemy.
Absolutely, and reputation is enormously important in warfare like this. The weapons are basically the same. You've got swords, muskets with bayonets, and artillery, and there's no different. There are minor differences in the caliber of the muskets, but not. You're going to die if you're hit by a Sharbour musket, just as you are by a Brown Bess, for example.
Confidence is so important with this, because what you were saying earlier, that the vast majority of casualties were actually, the surgeon reported that, I don't know what percentage it was, but most casualties were inflicted, wounds were in the rear, sword wounds or stab wounds in the rear or back.
Most sword and bayonet wounds were to the rear of the person.
Most of the casualties were caused by once you've already started to run away.
Yes, once that confidence snaps, if the other side is doing its job properly, you are pretty much a dead man.
And that's the thing that the Old Guard brought, is that confidence in themselves.
Supreme confidence in themselves, and it was a confidence that was recognised by everybody else. And when historically the Guard fell back from the British line, it was shocking, and the news went through the French army.
I guess that was the risk of using the Old Guard as well. If they ever did lose, then that was going to have a huge negative impact on the French morale.
It shatters the morale of the army of the time, and it destroys the reputation of the Guard.
Yep.
To be fair,
Napoleon must have been very careful how he used them.
Yes. to be fair, the Guard was a huge formation. It was an army corps on its own. It wasn't like 1 or 2 battalions. It was a huge formation, and I think there were 2 Guard squares which are shown in the Waterloo film, the big Hollywood blockbuster, that formed square to give the rest of the army time to retreat, and they're the ones who stood and died to a man.
Yeah, because I remember in the film, I don't know how accurate it is, but they surrender, they refuse that, and then the artillery gets brought up to annihilate them by canister.
It's not quite as poetic as that, but the result
It's a bit
was
of
the same.
Hollywood in there.
Yes, albeit a Russian film.
So Bob, what's happening on the battlefield here?
Nothing good actually.
When will you bring us some good news?
I moved up my artillery a bit too late, so they're coming here now. And while trying to charge the enemy cannons spread throughout the enemy squares, I actually got into a melee with the Guard and my troops. Caught fright and ran off.
So the Guard reputation did its job.
Yes.
Were they British troops?
Nope.
Dutch.
They were
Dutch.
Dutch.
And who is that telling us this news? Is it Bart, who is
Somewhat Dutch.
somewhat Dutch?
Or only partially Dutch now.
It's all
You gotta be flexible.
right. We understand.
Oh, before I forget, we were going to give you the link
Yeah.
to Ian's book. This is the link on Amazon to Ian Dickey's book about wargaming on a budget. There are other books that he's been involved in, but this is one that he wrote himself. So if you want to know a bit more about Ian, that's a good place to look.
It doesn't mean I'm a skinflint.
These reenactment things are never cheap, are they?
No. Life isn't cheap.
You've got children, so that's not cheap.
No. Actually, I don't think they're my children. They're anyone's who cares to pay. I don't mean that. If you're listening, Alex or Helen, I don't mean that. And it is Father's Day on Sunday. I really, really don't mean it.
Yeah, I imagine they've been watching for the last 7 hours to catch you out.
Probably.
Actually, how long have we been broadcasting now? 10:30. I can't do the maths anymore.
It is
About
about
8 hours. Yeah, 8 can't talk either. 8 hours and 15 minutes we've been broadcasting now. I mean, I'm tired enough just watching the battle. I can't imagine how tired the people must have been actually fighting the battle.
So far, I'm letting the artillery do most of the work now. See, they suffer a good number of casualties here.
I once watched a bizarre race between a Royal Artillery crew firing a World War II 25-pounder and a group of reenactors firing a Napoleonic cannon. And the Napoleonic reenactors got off rounds faster than the Royal Artillery.
How's that possible?
They may not have gone so far or so fast, but they would certainly had a higher rate of fire.
I thought modern artillery was kind of
Well,
open the breach and
the-
chuck another shell in.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
It is. It shows the standard a group of amateurs, enthusiastic amateurs,
Yep.
can reach.
Yeah, I mean, I think the word amateur for some of these things is pretty insulting because they are extremely good at what they do.
Well,
We have these, we call them amateur historians, a lot of the guys that help us out with the research for the games, but in reality, they know every bit as much as some of the experts out there.
when I had the publishing business, I used to publish and edit miniature wargames magazine. I found that an enthusiastic amateur could very often outdo the professional historian.
Yeah.
There are professional historians who will come up with a theory after they've left university, which is, in common sense, totally ridiculous. But they do it to make a name for themselves, and there are.
Bart's routed some old guard. Is it? Are they
Yeah.
routed?
They're redeploying to the rear. That's not a rout.
These guys are not coming back.
Strangely
Ronnie.
enough, one of the books I came across were writings on the Napoleonic Wars but after the event. This is officers writing what they thought that could be done to improve the performance of the army. two things stick in my mind. Instead of swords, some bright spark, and he's probably right, thought that they should have double-barreled shotguns, because a double-barreled shotgun will kill more people within reach than a sword will.
Might be single use, but you're still.
You could get it reloaded if there was time. If not, you could hit somebody over the head with the back of it. And the other thing was that when you tried to move troops through a constricted area, it was quicker, rather than giving them orders, wheel left, wheel right, go march forward, and the rest of it, just say break and run over there, and they would send a marker through the village, the standard bearer or drummer or something, and they would go and break ranks, run through at their own pace as fast as they could, and reform on the stand at the other side. And I feel that perhaps that's what the Guard was doing.
Ah, they were just ahead of their time.
Yes,
They seem to be
reforming.
running an awfully long way to reform.
Yeah.
How very sensible.
Still a good number of French troops left though.
No, it's all everyone shouting, isn't it?
It is. It very much looks like the battle is going the way of history on Scourge of Waterloo. If you're just joining us, you're coming a little bit late to the party, but there is still some more to see. We're reenacting the Battle of Waterloo. It's the 200th anniversary. We've been playing now for 8 hours 15 minutes, and we've fought the battle end to end. We've seen the French have some early successes at Hougoumont and Papelotte, but things started to go downhill with the main assault with Elrond's corps against the Allied right. Took heavy casualties there and had to withdraw, and can't say it. D'Erlon's corps, there we go. D'Erlon's corps was pretty much taken out of the battle, and then an inappropriate cavalry charge by Ney on the left without infantry support spent much of the French cavalry. The Prussians then started arriving, and Lebeau could not do enough to hold them up. They pushed through him, and ultimately the French just ran out of time to break the British line, and now the British are on the offensive. Really, we're mopping up the leftovers of the French army at this stage, and as Ian was saying, it looks like the Guard have been left behind to hold the line whilst the rest of the army tries to retreat, because there don't seem to be an awful lot of French soldiers left in the line here.
They still got some nasty artillery doing a lot of damage though, unfortunately. And the problem is that of the Guard units, their morale is so high that it takes a very long time to actually rout them just with fire. So in all this time, they make my troops be an excellent target for their artillery.
Yeah, and they're hard to rout, so they make you spend even longer shooting at them. Is your artillery able to get in canister range?
Yeah, they should be. I'm just afraid they're focusing the skirmishers rather than the squares at this point, which they are.
So which British troops is this? Is that Guards battalions there?
Which one? Over here?
I thought the one to the left looks like a Guard flag, but I'm not an expert on this. Is that one of the Guards battalions?
This is the 33rd Yorkshire.
Nope, I'm wrong completely.
I think the Guard battalions were the ones that were shown in 4 ranks deep. Could that be right?
Yep.
That's the
there
first
we go.
Yeah.
There we
first
go.
foot guards.
So it's the British Guard. Go on, bring them up. Surely.
I'm not in control. I'm only in control of the.
They're not your troops.
Of the brave Dutch troops.
Right. So they're just there watching you get.
Basically, yeah.
Bunch of expendable.
Just saw some questions about the choppiness. Here we're seeing a very smooth frame rate, so I'm guessing choppiness is either related to our upload seems fine, so it's
Yeah.
possibly the download from Twitch, but here we're seeing a nice smooth frame rate.
It is certainly very smooth on the screen we've got here in the studio.
One of the things that we did, we turned the sprite count down to make sure that we didn't have any performance issues, but you can actually run with much larger units. So instead of having maybe, I think we're showing around 200 sprites for some of these units, you can have it up to maybe 300 or more. So you can control that in your settings and find a level of detail that you're comfortable with and works on your hardware.
The same for viewing distance. So in this case, we turned it up all the way. But if your PC might be struggling, if you're afraid you might not handle it, lowering the viewing distance.
There's quite a few tweaks you've got to
level of
play with
detail
up to
you can
control
set,
the performance.
The amount of vegetations you got in the map, all kinds of stuff. So a lot of flexibility with the game, both for technical specifications as well as for difficulty level. There are a couple of presets difficulty levels that set different realism options. But you can also set a custom level where you mix and match, tweak it. You can even make the enemy regiments 50% stronger if you want to, on the real challenge, or a bit weaker if you're still learning the game.
So lots of difficulty levels you can tweak as well.
Yeah, so there, like I said, there are the presets, but you can mix and match them as well.
It's a very customizable game.
These guys can't hold out that much longer.
Can we zoom in a little bit on the old guard? I love the old guard uniforms. Oh dear, they're dropping like flies. How many guard battalions are left there facing you?
3, 2, 3. A couple more over here. They're facing my allies. At least 3, plus they're supported artillery and some skirmisher units, which are detached and like filling in the gaps between the squares.
Is it worth charging into hand with them, or is that not the plan?
It did not work for me at all in the beginning.
Okay.
Some cavalry could take out the artillery if you've got some hanging around the back.
I'm not in control of any cavalry at the moment.
So why are they in square? Are they just feeling outnumbered, they're outflanked? Is it, you've got allied French cavalry here, allied cavalry that's...
There is cavalry at the back here.
Well, there's a lot of cavalry.
If we look at the map quickly.
Who's that pouring forward? So you just ordered those guys forwards?
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Pressed the wrong button.
Move the camera. So moving some fast troops to engage the
Into short range.
exactly. I'm gonna have these guys creeping up slowly. So here we can see our allies are engaged with the French as well. Lots of fighting going on. Again, this is all handled by the AI completely. So if you just want to sit back and watch a cool battle unfold, you can do that.
Yeah, it's quite interesting just watching the actual action play out.
So let's move these guys up.
Oh, some of the French have come out of square over there. Oh no, that's just the other part of the line. So if you're not familiar with the game system, there's some very unique concepts inside Scourge of War. One is the command structure. So you can choose to play at any level of commander. So Bart here is line commander of all the troops on this battlefield on the Allied side. He is a brigade commander, did you say?
Division.
A division commander. So he just has command control of a division, and the rest of the army is being controlled by the AI. And his orders are issued to him by the AI about what his objectives are that he has to capture. And you can configure the game to play any level in that command structure, from a low regimental commander all the way up to the army commander, Napoleon or Wellington.
Exactly. And then anywhere in between, and you can mix and match that in multiplayer.
We've got a charge going in here. Who's that charging? Are they Dutch Belgians or?
We got here the National Militia of the Second Dutch Brigade of the Third Dutch Infantry Division. Dutch meaning here Belgium and Dutch.
Dutch Belgium. Okay.
Yeah.
Belgium didn't exist until about 1835.
Okay.
Treaty of London.
Well, 1830 we basically got kicked out of there. that was the Belgian
Okay.
revolt. Took a couple of years yet before it was officially stated in the treaties, but that's basically the year when the Dutch king no longer had any control.
You were right. Charging them was a bad idea.
Yes, I was actually fairly confident this time. I figured they had suffered so many casualties,
Yeah, they are tough.
but this is not good at all.
Can you just walk up and shoot them at point blank range?
That's what the second strategy is. Over here, things are going slightly better. We get some
Fresh
Right.
troops arriving. Through volume.
grenadiers.
Oh, another grenadiers.
Finally,
That's the guard one.
There's two of them. There's two or three more. Oh, just appeared. Or was that just redeploying that one?
I think it just redeployed.
You move back a bit.
It's not good news anyway.
Does the shooting mechanism take into account firing?
Yes, so in this case, when I select a unit, every unit you see with like the targeting symbol above it can be targeted by the unit. The AI will choose its own target, but it prefers to shoot at something straight ahead, where it has the most accuracy.
Yes.
So it will shoot for the most effect. So these will be prioritized by the AI, and they often refuse to shoot when enemy troops are in front, or when friendly troops are in front of them. So you want to have like entire lines shooting through each other basically onto the enemy. They take into account line of fight and line of sight and line of fire rules. And of course, you shoot for the most effect within the optimal range for the musket, which for the standard one was about 40 yards, if I recall correctly.
That's right.
Just seeing a question about the French and square. The AI obviously sees a threat of cavalry from somewhere, which is forcing them into square. It's not cavalry that's under Bart's direct control, so there's nothing we can do with it. But the threat is enough to make the guard go into square.
Well, the thing is, earlier in the day, especially with the nose attack, the French were moved up to the ridge, then were kicked out by the cavalry counterattack. So it's certainly a threat for the French troops here to have that happen again.
Is that your artillery there? Can you bring them forwards so they
They're
it takes too long to
they
advance?
suffered a number of casualties already by being too close, actually.
Oh right, yeah, they have. They've suffered 40 casualties out of 100. So yeah, 40% casualties.
There was the artillery thinking they were safe. One of the things you can do in this game is set your artillery to counter battery fire. Although it's usually, it's hard to be very effective when doing it.
Yes, it was.
How was this used historically?
Countering battery fire was generally considered to be a mistake. Artillery as a target is quite dispersed. Obviously, there are guns that you can hit and crew you can hit, and if you get really lucky, you could get a bounce through onto artillery caisson and have it blow up. But it was deemed far more profitable to shoot at regular infantry, blocks, or cavalry. It's a target that's easier to hit, and it has a more instant effect.
Right.
I mean, to stop an artillery gun firing, you've got to knock out the crew or knock off a wheel. Well, not very far to the rear, there are spare wheels, so it can be
So
repaired.
if it got hit by a round, the chances are that it was repairable if you spotted it.
Well, there was the possibility that it was repairable, But it was just generally not as productive as shooting at infantry. The best way to deal with artillery from the point of view of being shot at by artillery is to send your skirmishers out or get light cavalry to charge from an angle that they couldn't shoot at.
Right. So we got a nice line here firing on the enemy, and on our left it's going fairly well actually. The French really, their ranks are going very thin. So couriers coming up here, ordering them to slowly start advancing on the enemy to put more pressure. So hopefully, I was actually planning to do it the other way around, but these squares over here prove so resilient that I might actually try and free up some units on my left and have them contribute to fighting these squares. Whereas initially I was planning to push on my right and then roll them up from the right.
There's not a lot of French left on the left anymore.
No. Which is, I can thank my ally who supported me on my left for that. Oh yes, if you're wondering what's happening on the other screen, you can see the top right. We're doing a tabletop reenactment of the Battle of Waterloo simultaneously with the digital reenactment we got going on over here. So every now and then we switch over to there and see what's happening on their end. I think the Prussians were starting to arrive last time we checked in with them.
And the Prussians were well on the way. They'd all three corps of Prussians had arrived. The British centre was looking a bit fragile, but it was still in the balance. But I think the edge was with the Allies. I'm not sure the French were going to break the British line, and the Prussians were really arriving in force. So we're going to jump back to that when we finish the scenario and get an update from them on how they're doing. How long have you got left?
We have left about 15 minutes.
And your objective is just to take these inflicting as many casualties as possible.
If we get to the battle information.
So repulse the enemy attack. Ah, there's an enemy attack.
Well, that was the French coming in initially.
Okay.
So their attack was well underway, and
I missed the start.
Yeah, the British and German troops holding the line were starting to get pushed back. So the fresh Dutch troops are pushed in to save the day, basically.
Ah, so basically the Dutch won Waterloo.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And of the mostly people from the Netherlands, not from Belgium, really. Again, it looks like I'm doing very well against these squares, but I'm still so hesitant to charge.
Time consuming, isn't it?
They are
Try it for 2 times.
resilient.
It just refused to run away. So if anyone's questioning French bravery at this point, please have a look here because
with 2 squares gone, but there's still 2 minutes.
These guys, the flank is going to threaten a bit. So we're now going to slowly retreat. I have to move a bit more to the center because my order will take very long to.
Oh, the messenger got shot.
Oh gosh.
Another one got shot.
Yeah, so good thing I'm starting to reposition.
So yeah, one of the other things about the game which is quite unique is the courier system. So this is a mode you can turn on or off depending on how you want to play. If you want to, you can have instant reaction when you give an order. But the more realistic way to play is that when you issue an order, a courier, you saw them just moving off there, the courier will run off to the general or the unit you're ordering and issue the order, and then if you've given an order to, say, a corps commander, he will then send out couriers to all his divisional commanders to give them the orders you just instructed. And so all the orders are delayed, and the positioning of your general is very important because the time it takes the courier to arrive obviously affects the delay between you issuing an order and it being executed. And it also encourages you to not micromanage as much, because micromanagement requires instant reaction. You've got to think ahead, and it ends up with trying to keep plans simple. Complicated plans don't tend to work because there's too much micromanagement needed.
Excellent.
Don't think they're routing, are they? Are they just retreating?
They seem to be going somewhere.
They don't look like they're running. Oh no, maybe they are.
But I am going to use this problem to push forward my artillery a bit more. So should they
both
come
going.
back, that we're ready and waiting for them. That's good, so I can use these to support this minor French. So a little bit. You guys no longer need to retreat, so you can hold your position. Now I'm going to move myself closer to the action.
Can you just tell these guys to pursue them, or?
Yes, you can do that. In this case, I don't really want them to do so because I'm afraid it would pursue them way too far into.
There might be something else you don't know about back there.
And they're already
They're
regrouping.
reforming.
So if they get back into a defensive formation,
Yep.
then that would be
Back in
fine
square.
because I'm at the point of moving up my artillery here.
Right.
So this would only.
They're both reformed.
Nice fire going on these guys now. Looks like we're still holding the line. So let's move up. A volley? Problem with the volley is, of course, sending it out takes a long time to wait for everyone to reload.
What's the difference between a volley and a normal?
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you don't actually. It's a morale thing. It's more scary to be on the receiving end of the volley than it is.
So what would the normal behaviour be? Would units normally just fire at will as quickly as they can reload, or would they fire on the volley?
It really is at the whim of the officer and the circumstance. If you want to stop somebody charging, or a cavalry charge, or an infantry
That's
charge,
when you really
if you
want
want to
to-
stop it dead in its tracks, you
Yeah.
fire. You've got to get everybody there at the same instant to get the fire shot
Yep.
to get them to stop. In a general firefight, it degenerates into a fire by a fur volunteer.
Just as quick as you can. There's no point in waiting for
Fire at will.
your neighbour to load.
Yeah.
I was foolish enough to pan the camera just when they fired the volley.
You missed the volley.
Oh. You'll have to do it again.
I wanted them to volley again. One thing we see here is we got a little bit of smoke effect, but we toned it down in game terms, so the player would still actually be able to see what's happening.
In reality, there'd be an awful lot more smoke than this.
So, is there anything known about the actual visibility in combat for your line soldier, basically? After a couple of rounds, would they still be able to see the enemy, or?
Depends on the wind.
Right.
It's the
that
short
makes sense.
answer. If the wind is blowing in their faces, the smoke will be taken away behind them. If the wind is blowing downwind, the smoke bank will roll.
So the smoke bank had the potential to completely block line of sight.
Absolutely, yes.
Know anything about the wind at Waterloo, or is it?
I don't.
So you can, if you really want, if you got this game, you want the full experience, you can actually change the smoke effects to be a lot more persistent. In the one of the text files, you can mod yourself. This game is very mod friendly and comes with built-in modding support already. The team is working on releasing a SDK, a software development kit, to give you even more freedom. And we worked as well as making the AI as moddable as possible. So if you want to see your own custom formations in there, it's still not easy, of course. Modding still requires a good deal of effort, but we tried to made it as accessible as possible.
Squares off again.
That's the artillery doing a very good job here.
strengthen that second line.
I'm not happy with that. You guys are we're going to be fatigued as well, so the troops are getting tired.
Can you rest them and they will recover?
Yes, you can move them to the rear basically. They will recover, albeit slowly.
So probably that's something that takes more effect in the longer scenarios.
Yeah, exactly. So here we go. We got about 7 minutes left. We've managed to clear this entire area actually. So bring in.
Do you think you've won this one?
I'm not sure because I lost a lot of score-wise. I mean, tactically, yes, the French are gone.
Yeah.
There's no threat anymore to the lines. Score-wise, I'm not sure because I was a bit too eager to charge at the beginning.
Okay, we had a couple of bad leads, didn't you? With
Exactly.
The, with the guard.
So these are finally running off.
Oh,
My troops are running off as
too.
well. It's basically they get so tired that they, and then when they're tired, their morale drops quicker as well.
Yeah.
So they are off, unfortunately. I am bringing in some fresh troops, well, relatively speaking.
French must be getting a bit tired too.
It should be. We've got artillery all together. And we can see it's getting darker, by the way. If
Oh, is there a time of day?
we're getting into the evening, so we're at 8:23, and we see visibility is getting reduced.
Yeah. Because earlier on you could actually see past that building. and
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
pretty
We can
clear.
see well into the distance. With more troops moving up to deal with the remainder of the French. Brave troops.
Mm.
These are not even the guards that are fighting. And again, we can see the number of casualties.
Yeah.
A good number of them could use probably some of the medical equipment that you showcased earlier.
Ooh, please.
Hopefully we got some stretchers waiting for these lads.
Oh yes. There was one battle in Russia where it wasn't Borodino, it was another one. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. But the dressing station, the field hospital, everybody was brought to the same spot, and they literally filled a 2-story house with cut off limbs.
Gosh.
And the Russians couldn't believe. I mean, you can imagine after a week, the smell and the flies, and somebody had to go and clear it out.
Just put fire to it.
Well, yes, I don't know whether it would all burn.
And again, it's getting even darker. As
Yeah,
we
it's
approach
getting,
the
quite a problem.
final 4 minutes of not just this scenario, but of our digital reenactment, with basically the attack of the guard being the last of Napoleon's hope of winning the battle. So how realistic was this attack historically?
I think you've done a very good job. I'm not getting paid to say that. I think you have done a very good job. I'm impressed with the formations, the way the troops move in and out of formation, and the general results of the combats between them. It's very good. Nothing can ever be quite the same.
Of course.
It's important to remember, as I said in the other one, that although this is a game for us, for them 200 years ago it was real, and those aren't little images on the table, they would have been real people with mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters.
So it's really not that long ago when you think about it. And 200 years ago, when you think of 200 years in history, the things that changed, the last 200 years have changed more than any
The rate of
200
change
years.
has accelerated
It is, yeah.
enormously.
Because you go back 200 years before this to the 1700s, yes, it was different, but not. Sorry, yes. Do my maths wrong. It's been a long day.
It has been. It has been a very long day.
The 1600s, they were still. I mean, that was still a pike and shot kind of period. 1600s, wasn't it? So not quite Napoleonic, but more recognisable. These would have recognised a pike and shot battle much more than they would
Well,
have
if
recognised
you
a
go back
battle
to
in modern warfare.
1615, it predates the pug bayonet, or it predates the ring bayonet. So you would have needed the pike there to protect the infantry from the cavalry, against whom they had no defence.
When was the bayonet invented?
It started off as a pug bayonet in the very early 18th century, and then went to a ring bayonet not long after that.
So it used to stop you from firing whilst you had the bayonet on.
You couldn't fire and have a bayonet on at the same time.
You can't really load it with a bayonet on anyway, can you? You get one
Well,
shot.
you can load it with a bayonet. There's a chance that you're going to damage your fingers in the process.
So we're into the last 2 minutes now, and it's getting dark here.
It is, isn't it? It's got dark quite quickly.
Our line of sight has been reduced significantly, and so even if these French were to run away, we probably wouldn't be able to see them
Like that.
for a chase. But we got them pretty much surrounded. There's only one way for them to go, and that's back to where they came from.
Someone's asking if we're going to be saving the stream, and yes, the plan is to. Everything's been saved locally, and I think Twitch automatically keeps it anyway. But the plan is also we're going to split it into the scenario chunks that we played, and upload each scenario as a separate YouTube stream as well. So the entire day will be available to watch later for anyone who wants to look at it, and it should be available just automatically on Twitch as well.
Exactly. So we're watching the last of the brave French troops. Gosh, line of sight is horrible.
The darkness is encroaching very fast.
The guards are already gone. These aren't even guards, I think.
51st line.
Second battalion. At least the line is good. They've had enough for now.
We run off into the night. So what time is it now? It's 8:30. Well, 5 seconds
Yeah,
left.
last
Yeah.
couple
It is
seconds.
8:30, so darkness is starting to descend.
Lovely. I had so hoped to end with a victory, but yeah, the initial charges didn't go well for my score. Tactically, though, of course, we managed to kick out the French. So in that respect, it's very much a victory.
Well, I think you did well, Bart. Don't care what the game
Pretty
says.
much.
Well, that is the end.
Why is
of,
this an English newspaper and not a Dutch newspaper?
That's the end of the battle from Scourge of Waterloo. We still have to find out what happened on the tabletop, but before we go to that, we're going to talk to Ian a little bit about the aftermath of the battle. So tell us a bit about what happened next. Unless someone throws the microphone on the floor.
Just rearrange the microphone. Yes, there were 220,000, if you include the Prussians, 220,000 people fighting on this battlefield. It's very small for that number of people, just 3 mile frontage and a depth of up to 1 mile.
When you think about that, 70,000 people per mile.
Yes.
And 1,600 yards per mile. So you're looking at, what's the maths? It's 50 people per yard on the width of the battlefield.
Yes. It is
enormous
phenomenal.
density.
And out of that, about 20% were casualties, 44,000 people dead or injured on the field.
And when you say injured, that's the injured at the point of seriously injured, not talking.
Not a scratch. No, these are people who so injured they can't get off themselves. The French had been completely routed and their medical system routed with them. The Prussians were designated to pursue the French, so their army went off in pursuit of the French. That left the Allies, the British, Germans, Dutch, Belgians, everybody in Wellington's army, who were frankly absolutely exhausted by the trauma and effort they put in through the day, and they slept on the battlefield amongst the dead and wounded. The next day, the Allied army moved off, leaving the 44,000 pretty much on the field.
So at this point, there'd been no medical care whatsoever.
There was some medical care for the army, for the nationalities that were there. So the French were left to fend for themselves. The British and Allied, they tried to take them back up to Waterloo. Everybody's medical services were completely overwhelmed. And because the armies then moved off, those that were left were pretty much left. The consequences were there were still people being picked up off the field a week later. A week.
So they'd just been lying on the battlefield
They
for a
had
week.
been dragging, the ones who could, drag themselves from one body to another to find something to drink, because it's an extremely thirsty experience. And there were even clear signs that some of them had resorted to cannibalism on the field because they had nothing to eat, starving, hungry. Remember, the British, the Allies, hadn't eaten for 2 days. And then there's the trauma of the battle. An incidental consequence. If you were here when I did the medical display, you will have seen me show this contraption for extracting teeth. There were two sources of teeth at the time. I know I'm repeating myself. Either a dried hardwood like oak, which would be banged in the hole and then expand to fit with the moisture in the mouth, or a dead man's teeth. There were so many dead man's teeth retrieved from the Battle of Waterloo. They were known as Waterloo teeth, and the price of false teeth plummeted because of it, because there were so many.
It's just nasty.
It is nasty.
How does it compare to other battles? Was it much more bloody in terms of casualties? I don't have anything to compare with.
There were battles which were, I believe, bigger. Borodino in front of Moscow was I believe, a bigger battle. But because the sources are so difficult to follow, first of all, not many of the sources written by the French before their return survived, because not much did survive. And Russia's been through so many traumas with German invasion, revolution, and another German
many of their
invasion.
records have been lost or destroyed.
That's right, and they held the war against the French in 1812. They made it to be the first great patriotic war, and the war against the Germans the second great patriotic war. So it got used, as history always does get used, for one reason or another. It may be a dead subject, but it's still being manipulated by people nowadays. Look at the furore over Belgium minting a coin to thumb their nose at the French and the way the French responded. It's still, there is still life in history. That's probably prophetic.
Very much so.
Anyway, we did discuss doing something else at this time.
Yes,
What we're going to do is we're going to go through to next door. Let me just get them ready.
Right, so we're going to head over to the other room now for the closing action and comments. Thank you all for watching on the digital reenactment. Again, we're going to try and make the full stream available on the other end, and we're going to go ahead there now. And thank you all for watching and for your advice.
We're back in the room with Field of Glory Napoleonics now, and what we'd like to do now is we're going to take a 2-minute silence just to remember the the more than 40,000 injured and killed of the battle and of other battles since. Thanks very much, guys. That was the 2-minute silence. What we'd like to do now is take a tour of the Field of Glory battlefield to see what the current situation is here. Coming over, we'll run round the commanders in order. So first off, can we have a report on the current situation from the Prince of Orange, if I give him a microphone?
Hi, Ian. Yeah, the far right wing has held. We lost Hougoumont early on in the day. We retreated to the ridge behind, held that ridge quite well, had several attacks which we repulsed, saw off some cavalry. Unfortunately, moving more towards the centre against between the Haysons and the Hougoumont, traditionally where the guard in the real battle were thrown back at the end. There seems to be a bit of a breakthrough, a mixture of is it Young Guard and Cuirassiers have punched a hole in the middle between the Haysons and the Hougoumont, and unfortunately some of the Dutch troops have decided to leave the field, having fought bravely, but they were outnumbered. There is therefore a little bit of a problem on my left side, which is the centre of the battlefield, where the Allies are trying to plug the hole with the Brunswicks, which are the reserve from the far right, who have slowly moved across the battlefield in the rear. What
you're saying is you can't trust your commander-in-chief.
Oh, well, no, it was his deployment, I suppose, in the initial phases, but yeah, hopefully the reserve Brunswick will help stabilise the situation.
So you're going to save the day, is that the plan?
Well, let's hope so. Duke of Brunswick is there, and I have every confidence in him.
Passing across, can we get an update from Jerome? So, tell us, Jerome, how are things going for you?
My attack to take the ridge has failed completely. I've been driven back.
So not so good then?
Not so good, but I expect I'll hold Hougoumont for the whenever and however. I've got plenty of troops around there.
Hougoumont doesn't look in any danger at all at the moment.
We're in a sort of stalemate really at this end.
So it's a bit of a standoff on this end of the line. The decisive area seems to be more central on the battlefield.
It is, yeah. Yeah,
Let-
which I've
let's-
got a division.
Pass across to Terry, otherwise known as God. Terry, tell us what's happening in the middle.
Thanks, Ian. Well, in the middle, the young guard attacked instead of the middle guard, supported by a rather late attack from one of the Cuirassier divisions, and has managed to punch a hole and climb to the top of the ridge, looking down on the road to Brussels at the moment.
So it's temptingly close.
It is. There's still numbers of British and Hanoverian infantry and cavalry, most of it fairly light, that is attempting to stop us. It's a difficult situation.
We'll come back to you in a little bit to get your prediction for how the battle would have unfolded beyond this point. Next, can we have a talk to Napoleon? I've lost Napoleon. Very careless. Yeah. Is Napoleon still on the field? So Napoleon, how's it going?
It's going swimmingly well. Absolutely shocked how well we've done, really.
Really?
Well, I've got to keep everybody in Paris. at the moment, so,
You sent home the victory report already?
We have. We managed to do on the day pretty much equal Marshal Ney and attack with cavalry only, with varying success.
Well, you managed to kill the infantry before the cavalry got there, didn't you?
Pretty much, yeah. That was some skill involved there. We've also got Marshal Ney killed, which is
Marshal
always-
Ney's killed, okay.
yeah,
Well, at
which
least he
is
can't do
always
any
a
more
good thing.
damage.
Exactly. We've managed to contain the Prussians, but we're looking forward to night time now, to be honest. So we're quite happy.
Okay, thank you very much, Napoleon. Can I pass across to Wellington?
Thank you, Ian.
So Wellington, tell us what's happened. It's
Well,
all looking a bit
I know Paddy's very
busy.
optimistic, but I think actually we're okay now. It's been a very, very close run thing. We finally killed Marshal Ney. There will be thousands of bodies along this ridge, and we've actually killed the Chevalier Guard to a man in the middle here, eventually, after probably 3 hours of fighting, in fact. So it's been quite devastating. But Wellington has now got an iron grip on the area around here and has rallied a number of veterans who are now swinging around to protect the area where Chris is in trouble. So I think we're okay.
You see no problem at all?
I don't think we're in any problem. And I must say, I think when Wellington summoned the Brunswickers across as a reserve to help us over here, we knew full well they may be useful to Chris at just the right moment. And as you can see, they're passing by the gap just at this very moment. So that's very, very handy. So we actually are looking very bruised and battered, but I think rather secure now. And we can await the massive Blucher to win the day.
Let's go to Blucher then and find out how things are going over on his flank. So Blucher, you're definitely much further advanced than we saw you last time.
Yes, we've pushed back everything that's in front of us. There's another line of French troops, but they're not guard, and good chance they're all conscripts. So I think within another 2 turns of this battle, we would have pushed through those as well.
So what time have we actually got to on the battle here? I think we're a little bit behind real time, aren't we, on the tabletop? So you think we are kind of up to real time with the battle? Okay, so this is where the battle would have been coming to a close in reality, although this battle still seems to have a lot of life left in it. What I'd like to do now is pass it over to the impartial Terry, who is now going to look at the current situation and give us his prediction on how this would have finished up.
Yeah, actually, going back to your point about are we behind time, we're probably, due to delays of presentations and such like, we probably are about an hour behind where we should be had we played it without any interruptions. So
sorry.
So yeah, realistically, it's probably about 7:30 in the evening in battle terms. Looking at the field here, I don't think the French have got enough to hold back the Prussians on that flank. The Prussians will carry on pushing forwards without too much hindrance, I don't think. The right-hand side of the French is just about spent. The British left is looking fairly solid now, as is the British right. It's really still the centre that's that's debatable. There are still fairly fresh units of cuirassiers and some young guard in the centre on top of the ridge, but I'd say it's going to take them more than an hour to do anything to exploit that. And with the reserves coming up for the British, I think they'll probably hold out till nightfall. And
it sounds like the best the French can hope for is a bloody draw out of this
yeah,
at the moment.
I'm thinking a bloody draw and probably a retreat overnight, which would effectively end the French campaign, I suspect.
Can we just go back to Ian for a moment? Could you, based on this conclusion of the battle, what would be your kind of prediction of the following events?
Historically speaking, I don't think it will change very much at all. The French are going to blow themselves out on this battlefield. The Prussians, although we've got about 2 corps, I think there are more corps which could arrive tomorrow. Even if the French hold on, I don't think they're in a position to pursue up to Brussels and try and force a change of government policy there. And further east, there are 80,000 more troops coming in over the German border. I think they were Austrian. There's about 250,000 Russians on the march, and I believe there are more coming up, fighting their way up even now from Italy and the Pyrenees. So the end result would have been the same. France was a busted flush. There was no more fight left in the country, and Europe had for once combined in concerted, decisive action, something they don't seem to be able to do today.
Thanks very much, Ian. Well, that's
Welcome.
the end of our reenactment for the day. All I'd like to do now is say thank you to everyone that was involved. Can you just put... All I'd like to do now is just say thank you to everyone that's been involved today. So thanks so much to Ian Dickey for coming down, being our historical expert. Been a hugely valuable part of the day. His insights and the little bits of information that he's told us and all the equipment he brought, it's really interesting. It's really added a lot to the whole day. Thanks to everybody who played the game, and especially Terry, who was involved in preparing these many thousands of figures, the terrain, just the general organisation. So thanks to Terry, thanks to Simon, thanks to Chris, Alan, Paddy. Have I missed anybody? Steve. Thank you everyone so much for doing this. It's been a great day. Thanks so much to Bart and to Matthew for doing the battle refight, and thanks very much to Joe, who isn't here today, who was heavily involved with getting everything prepared with the tech side, all our cameras and various organisational things, and Nick for helping out with all that, and for feeding everybody. So thanks very much, guys. And we've got a gift for everyone who came. There we go. Copy of Commander Europe at War on PC. And that's about it for today. Thanks also to, of course, to everyone who tuned in to listen. We've got something like 39,000 views, so it's been a very, very great day, and we've really, really enjoyed it. And we may even do it again one day. So, in 200 years, that's right. So that's it. Goodbye, guys. Thank you very much.